Let's move on to an extremely turbulent area of the world, Gaza. Of course, today the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas was broken. Israel's resumed strikes in response to Hamas rockets. What's your response to those who say Hamas's decision to break the ceasefire shows they're not willing to negotiate?
Well, the ceasefire had finished. It elapsed after 72 hours. It was not a ceasefire, but a pause in the large-scale massacre of Palestinians trapped in the Gaza concentration camp, the biggest concentration camp in the world, in which almost 2 million people are trapped behind the barbed wire in an area 25 miles long and 4.5 miles wide. Nowhere run, nowhere to hide. And so the context, as you mentioned the word earlier, is this, that Israel has stolen the Palestinians' land, wiped their country off the map, scattered their people to the four corners of the earth, besieges Gaza, controlling even the calorie intake of every Gazan, 80% of whom are reliant on international food aid, 80% of whom are unemployed, and 80% of the children in Gaza are malnourished, according to the United Nations. They have occupied the West Bank, covered it, paved it with hundreds of illegal settlements, built military roads crisscrossing the territory, an apartheid wall, checkpoints by the hundred, and they have illegally annexed East Jerusalem and are in the process of ethnically cleansing the Arab, Muslim, and Christian population from Jerusalem. So if you're not going to have resistance to that, you're not going to have resistance to anything. The word Hamas is just a shorthand for the Palestinian resistance, who actually are members of all kinds of political and military organizations. But if you invade somebody's country, if you occupy it, if you fundamentally alter its character, and if after 67 years there is no conceivable political or peaceful or diplomatic way out, the people will rise up. And that's what the Palestinians are doing. In the Second World War, the heroes of the Jewish ghetto in Warsaw, the Warsaw Ghetto, the people decided that they would not die one by one, 10 by 10, on their knees, waiting for their captors to murder them, but would rise up and, if necessary, die on their feet. And they wrote their name in the stars. They are amongst the greatest heroes of the Second World War. They broke out from their barbed wire and they confronted the fascists who were killing them one by one, 10 by 10. And that's, frankly, all that the Palestinians are trying to do.
What's amazing about that, George, is the tunnels that existed back then as well. And you can look back at the days of slavery here, the tunnels here. So it's amazing to just keep calling these terror tunnels. We're going to go and destroy all these. And of course, journalist Chris Hedges has cited this argument as well, where he cites the Article of Self-Defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. A helpless civilian population has the right to protect itself, to resist against weapons of industrial warfare. What is the solution here, George? Two-state solution, one-state solution? Mm-hmm.
Well, I frankly supported the Oslo Agreement when it was written almost 20 years ago. But 20 years later, not only is not 1 centimeter of Palestine free of Israeli occupation or siege or annexation, the West Bank demographic and topographic alterations made by the illegal settlements and so on that I mentioned make any possibility of a two-state solution otiose. And frankly, to talk about a two-state solution now is to fly in the face of reality. It's a tiny place. It's smaller than one park in South Africa. Apartheid South Africa became one single democratic state from one end to the other, in which black people and white people lived as equal citizens under the law, with one man, one woman, one vote. And that's the best solution for the Israel-Palestine conflict too. Some people say that's never going to happen. Well, the so-called two-state solution is never going to happen either, and that's not a solution, so why should people fight for it?
Right. I mean, we should let the chips fall where they may. Of course, things aren't perfect still in South Africa, but ending the apartheid state is the first step. George, let's talk about Saida Warsi, the former senior foreign office minister in the UK who publicly resigned over the government policy on Gaza. She says it's morally indefensible, where after 4 weeks of a conflict, more than a quarter of the Gazan population displaced, nearly 2,000 people killed, 400 innocent children. We still cannot find the words to say we condemn this, and we feel this action has been disproportionate. Of course, in the U.S., it's the same thing, George. Why is Israel given so much impunity from the West time and again?
Well, in the U.S. Senate, as you will know, they voted 97-0 to defend Israel's war, to condemn the Palestinian resistance, and to condemn the United Nations for having voted to investigate allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity. That's as stark an example of the stranglehold which the Israel lobby has over American politics. Now, I very purposefully say Israel lobby, not Jewish lobby, because, of course, the vast majority of the Israel lobby in the United States are fanatic Christians, not Jews. Many of them, maybe most of them, don't even like Jews. And many Jews are on our side. Religious Jews, secular, progressive Jews are marching with us. So this is not a dichotomy about religion. It's a dichotomy about justice and injustice. And the United States government and its Congress has nailed its colors on the side of injustice. And I'm here to tell you that that's just not in the United States' own national interest. Most people in the world regard Israel as a rogue terrorist state. They regard the crimes of Israel as being beyond the pale. And they know that every crime is paid for and politically buttressed by the United States of America, which provides the money, the weapons, the political and diplomatic and even media support. That's making billions of people in the world hate the United States even more than they perhaps already did. That cannot be a US national interest. So all I ask from the United States government is that you somehow find the backbone to stand up for your own country's interest rather than burning all of your remaining political capital in defense of the indefensible.
Absolutely. And we just heard that not only the financial support, the surveillance support to track and target Palestinians as well. Unbelievable. George, let's wrap this up with an update on your documentary called The Killing of Tony Blair. What's the craziest thing you've uncovered while filming, and when should we expect the documentary to be released?
The documentary will be premiered, its world premiere, at the South by Southwest International Film Festival in Austin, Texas, quite close to Crawford, Texas, where Tony Blair and George W. Bush, I'm not making this up, got down on their knees and prayed for the success of their adventure that they were about to launch, Imagine. Its British premiere will be a week later at the Edinburgh Film Festival. So March, it will be out. With all guns blazing. We have discovered secrets about the financial treasure chest, the phenomenal, fantastic $100 million bounty, $100 million that Tony Blair has amassed in the last 7 years. We have talked to people who are his victims. By the end of our film, by the time the titles come up, and your name will be in those titles, by the time those titles come up, nobody will employ Tony Blair. He'll be sacked as the so-called peace envoy in the Middle East, and I hope he'll be on his way to The Hague and to jail.
It's about time. Thank you so much, George Galloway, member of the Respect Party in Parliament. Always appreciate your amazing insight.